So now I'm going to ask the really important question. And knowing that you've done Toastmasters, Melissa, I'm going to pick on you first.
It's pick on Melissa day today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, you're good at it. So yeah. All right. So Melissa, why should we listen to this episode today?
To gain valuable insights from 4 exceptional women, each with diverse and accomplished backgrounds.
Hi, and welcome to Serenity Now, a place for entrepreneurs to ask questions, learn, get connected, and be inspired. Join us as we talk about all things business and the search for the ever-elusive Serenity Now in both business and personal life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of our Serenity Sisters podcast. I'm going to take a stab and title this maybe something like The Generations of Diverse Women in Leadership. And we're talking to the millennial mavens and the golden girls. So we're going to explore the journey of some women in business across generations with diverse backgrounds. And I hope we'll share some of our stories about how we got started, some of the challenges, some of the triumphs, and maybe through this storytelling, you'll get some insights to help you with your journey. I'm your host, Rita Kim, and I'm joined by my Serenity sister, Candace. Welcome, Candace. Great. And before I go any further and introduce our 2 very special guests, I'm going to share a quote that might help set the tone for the podcast. It's a quote by Simon Sinek. And in the end, it's not about the title or the position. It's about what you're doing to grow others. We felt that it might be appropriate because we weren't here to say, hey, look at me. It was more like, hey, there's some stuff that we did and or messed up and or learned in our journey, and perhaps some of this might help you. So let's get started. Today, we're honored to have Melissa Gladue with us, a true millennial maven and a driving force behind this episode because she basically said, let's do this episode. And she'll share a little bit more about that later. Melissa, let's start off with you. Just kick it off and give us an intro about yourself.
Hi, Rita. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Melissa Gladue, the Senior Business Development Manager for Futurepreneur's Young Indigenous Program. I have a very interesting background of work experience. I come from a background in career coaching and law, and I have been in my role here at Futurepreneur for 2 years.
Great. Welcome, welcome. And then our second guest, who's no less amazing, is Holly. And I already know I'm going to butcher your last name, no matter how much I probably have tried this. So I'm going to let you give your last name. And please go ahead and share your introduction, Holly.
My name is Holly Atjecoutay. I am the director of the Indigenous Entrepreneur Startup Program. And most recently, my position changed. I have to stop introducing myself as that. It's kind of something very automatic that I do. Anyways, my new title now is Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Director of Indigenous and Northern Entrepreneurs at Futurepreneur. I have been at Futurepreneur now for over 2.5 years. My background is in nonprofit, oil and gas sectors, legal, and always working with an Indigenous community. And myself, I'm First Nations from Treaty 4 territory from Cowsdis First Nation in Southeast Saskatchewan. And I live, work, and play in Treaty 7 territory in Calgary, Alberta.
Great. Welcome. I'm so happy I don't have to say that title all the time with my name, Holly. We got to figure out a shorter version of that. So thank you and welcome. Okay, so let's begin, Melissa. You know, the inspiration behind this episode, we actually don't know where she's going to go with this today. We're just letting her kind of take over the reins and become a co-host. So, you know, you wanted us to go ahead and do this. So why did you think this would be something that would be a good episode to share with our listeners?
Well, the inspiration really happened, Rita, when you and I were in BC for the Owners Wanted sessions in Terrace. Listening to your work experience and background trajectory over the years was something that sparked an interest in me. I want to know where the Serenity Sisters started, what their career trajectory has been, and also leaders like Holly. I think it's really important for younger millennials, and I think to even the generations below that, like my nieces growing up, it's important to hear how you got to where you are. That is what sparked the interest.
Yes, I recall we were on the banks of the Skeena River, and I kind of, you said something, and I feel bad, dismissed it. And Andrea Welling was with us as well, and the two of you kind of shook me a little and said, "No, this is important." And I said, "Okay, well then you can take over, Melissa. We'll give it over to you. So go ahead, take the reins. You're now the co-host. Please go ahead and start with your questions."
Wonderful. I'd like to ask Holly my first question. Holly, can you share your journey to becoming the head of DEI, Director Indigenous Northern Entrepreneurs, and focusing on the key milestones of your career?
Yeah, I'll quickly go over this. I think that first off, I came from a background in education. My educational background was very choppy, and I had dropped out of high school when I was in grade 10. And then I went back in grade 11, and then I dropped out again. I never finished high school traditionally. And I think a lot of Indigenous people in general have this journey with schooling, and that's a really long, convoluted reasoning. But in any case, I realized quickly, becoming a young adult, I need to go back to school. And I did that, and I became class president. My whole idea was to get to law school, and that's where I really wanted to go. And it was that way while I was doing my undergraduate degree, and along the way, I was doing a lot of other things. I was working at the Aboriginal Friendship Center. I was the head of their youth programs there. I was working in oil and gas, in Aboriginal relations and human resources. And then I graduated with my undergrad with the full intent to go to law school, and then realizing I was, at that point, a mother to a very young girl, and that's not where my life was going to. So I actually fell into entrepreneurship, and with that, I was in an organization serving Alberta and serving Indigenous entrepreneurs to help them launch and grow their businesses, and then ended up into Futurepreneur. And when I came to Futurepreneur, I was doing a very similar role that I was previously in leading the Indigenous Entrepreneur Startup Program here, and then just recently added the diversity, equity, and inclusion to my portfolio. And I just want to say, like, that's the very, very short version of it. There was a lot of bumps and movements along the way, and a lot of barriers to overcome. And I've always been within Indigenous community. Every single role that I've held has been within Indigenous community, and as well adding in diversity, equity, and inclusion, even where it had the title of diversity, equity, inclusion. So I'm really, really, glad and honored to be in this position, and so excited to see what this new industry of diversity, equity, and inclusion really looks like in the corporate sector in Canada.
Thank you, Holly. I think that's such an important area to highlight, is that very common experience a lot of Indigenous people do go through, and to show where you started and where you're at now. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'd like to ask my next question to Candace. Candace, can you discuss the pivotal moments in your career that shaped your approach to delivering sharp financial analysis to clients?
I certainly can. Maybe a few backup steps. So I actually went into university planning on being an architect. Probably the biggest pivot towards being an accountant, a tax accountant, would have been when I decided that I wasn't okay. Way back then, when I was in engineering in university, I was one of two females in the room of 400 people. And it was made clear to me that I would have to be the best of the best to get an okay job. And I decided that I wasn't okay with that. And so I started exploring my options. I took some French, I took some philosophy, I did differential calculus, I did all sorts of things. But one of the classes that I was really enjoying and didn't really have to work hard at was accounting. And I'm like, well, maybe there's something to this accounting thing. So I proceeded to sign up to be a CGA student and finished off my university, filling some of the prerequisite courses. So that was probably the first pivotal moment in becoming an accountant, is deciding to become an accountant. The second was when I was a couple of years into my education. You have to get work experience while you're doing your education. I had a few jobs. One of them actually in oil was for a mining company. So I had some applications out there, had some job offers and interviews. And so it came to this point where I had this offer at a mining company, and I had an offer at a public practice firm. The mining company, their big draw was, eventually you'll get to go to South America for the audit or whatever it was. But it was going to be a very routine job. Like once you did the first month or two and get it down to routine, it was going to be very, very, very the same. So I kind of knew that public practice was going to be better for me, helping lots of clients and having, varied work and all that kind of stuff. So I chose the public practice job. And it's the firm where I'm still at today. So obviously it worked out for me. Eventually I got my designation and I became a partner, and fast forward 20 years and that's still what I'm doing today. And for the most part, loving it. Not everybody loves their job every day, but for the most part, I love what I do.
I love it, Candace. I love the reflection to understand you're not comfortable where you're at and the ability to pivot and make a change. Sometimes I still feel like I'm figuring out what I want to be when I become an adult. So it's nice to hear that I'm not alone in those areas. Rita, how do you balance risk management with growth opportunities in your career? And what lessons have you learned along the way?
Thanks, Melissa. We had no idea what she was going to ask us. So risk management and growth opportunities. I think the first thing that I take a look at is how does it match with what I want and my end goals when it comes to my life and business life. And they're pretty much, as you know, and as you go through this, they are one and the same. And so I like to have a lifestyle balance. And so when it comes to opportunities that come my way, I can kind of quickly review them and either push them aside within seconds, or actually just take a little bit longer to dive in and ask a few more questions to see if it does make sense for my lifestyle. This morning, I had an opportunity thrown at me to take on a pretty cool role with a new company, but I put it down within probably 3 minutes of reviewing and considering it because it didn't fit in with the schedule that I already have set up with my lifestyle right now at the moment. And I think maybe a few years back, I would have probably taken that on and then gotten a little stressed out because I would have had to switch off time for myself or had my downtime. Other opportunities have come my way where I have taken the time to do the risk analysis to make sure it did fit both with the company, reputational risk, and can we help and support and do the job that we want to do to support the clients, and at the same time managing our side. I would say early on in the Partners for Growth cycle, it's now 11 years old, I would take a little more on. I had more bandwidth. I guess I had more energy. And now it's more, I just slice and dice really quick. And I've been shaving off, as Candace knows, lots of things. We actually let go of one of our bigger clients a couple of months back. And it was a bit of work to do that. But, that is also risk. If you take that off, what do you do and how do you replace it? And normally you'd have a plan. But in this case, because it didn't fit the lifestyle, I didn't need a plan to replace it. I knew that as soon as you let go, you then have room to, see other opportunities come in. And it was replaced, almost instantly. It sounds really weird, but Candace is laughing. You guys can't see her, but we had our best month in June just because I let go of them in May. It was probably just a lot of joy and happiness for me letting go. And maybe that just attracted some really, really amazing opportunities as well. There's a lot of lessons I've learned along the way. I think the most important one, or one of the most important ones, boils down to what I just talked about, your lifestyle and your balance in who you are. You get lots of opportunities. It might not feel like that now if I'm talking to a millennial. You will get a lot of opportunities coming your way. And to discern what fits who you are, it takes some time. When you're at this stage in the golden age, it fits a lot better because you've gone through some of the trials and let me try this, see if that fits who I am. And you realize very quickly, no, it isn't, but you have to stay in there for a little while to just get yourself out. And now it's more learning. The way I like to explain is what you don't like. You go through these different opportunities and challenges that come your way to determine who you are, your character, and what fits you. And it's more like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. And you get closer and closer to what I do like and who I really am. And so it's that discernment, alignment of values. And like you said earlier, Melissa, figuring out who you are when you grow up. And we're all still doing that. Does that help?
Does. I know what I took from what you said, Rita, was the importance of the power of letting go. I think with the younger generations, millennials, that hustle culture, it's always like, what are we doing next? We're overworking ourselves at risk of burnout. So it's really good to hear that reinforcement that it's okay to let go, to focus on one thing. And I know that Holly's really good for pushing me on that as well.
I try. I don't know that she takes advice. But I think too, for me, it's like I have to take my own advice. And I think exactly what you say, Melissa, like our millennial generation is one that definitely gives all and is at a huge risk of burnout consistently. And finding that balance and finding that what is for us will be for us is something that like just major words of wisdom.
With that being said, Holly, what advice would you give to young Indigenous people aspiring to navigate their career paths and achieve similar success as you have?
Oh my goodness. I think most importantly, as young Indigenous professionals, number one, Indigenous people are a very small population of Canada, 5%. Maybe it's more than that. The government of Canada takes a while to update stats. So I think we're still talking 2019 stats. Hopefully we've crept up a little bit more, 6%. It's not small. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, it's a very, very small amount of the population. And what's great is that there's opportunity everywhere for all industries and all areas of career trajectories and what you decide to do in life. And whether that be in the medical field, in academia, in business, in entrepreneurship, and like the list goes on. And I think just really expanding the horizons to see what is available, what types of opportunities are there out there, and keeping aligned with a growing theme in this podcast, what fits with your values and what do you really want to do? Where is your passion? Where are you showing up so that you could potentially come to work every day and be super happy with what you're doing and feel fulfilled, feel like you're giving back to community and back to contributing to something greater than you are. And I think that for me, I've always strived for that in every career opportunity that I had. And some things didn't fit. I remember being in, I won't say which industry, but maybe like I'm in nonprofit now, so maybe that'll open it up. But I realized sitting there, like I was making a good paycheck, but I hated the work I was doing. And I felt like I was just like slogging along, like living for the night and living for the weekend. And now I confidently say, like, I can wake up every day and go, holy crap, like I'm really enjoying what I do and I'm living my passion. And I really, really love that. And so I want to see Indigenous young people strive for that. Go outside of what you're seeing every day and realize like there's thousands and thousands of career opportunities and different areas that you can get into. And knowing that you're going to add such incredible value and you're sought after, like only being 5% with the Truth and Reconciliation 94 calls to action. You know, this is one of the major pieces of those calls to action too, is to give that equal and equitable opportunity to Indigenous youth and Indigenous people. And so luckily there's many sectors and industries that are striving for that. And therefore, you know, you're going to have those opportunities at your door. It's just deciding which one to take and finding your circle of people to support you. And education is the buffalo. Every single type of education is the buffalo. Sorry, like we need people in trades. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need every single thing. So a lot of millennials maybe grew up thinking, I got to go to university, I got to get a university degree, I got to get into this field, that field, etc. I got to get into business, I got to get, you know, and that's, there's so many, and entrepreneurship, come on, we need this, we need to rebuild our economies, our Indigenous economies, and that the backbone of the foundation of that is entrepreneurship. Find your passion and do what you want.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly. I love the alignment between everybody's answers here. I didn't share them beforehand, but I had a conversation earlier this week with Rita too on the topic of compensation for roles that you might be looking at or stepping into and the importance of balancing your values when you're weighing out these decisions and how important it is to be happy with what you're doing and value aligned as opposed to that financial incentive. And I also have worked in an industry, I think very similar to yours, Holly, where great money, but I was not happy like I am now. I would like to ask my next question to Candace. How did your career journey lead you to co-host the Serenity Now for Entrepreneurs podcast? And what have been the significant turning points for you?
So I've known Rita for at least a decade, probably closer to a decade and a half. And we've done volunteer work and mentoring type work at the same business organizations throughout our path. So we run into each other frequently. And she called me up one day and said that she wanted to write a book and that she needed an accountant's perspective on this book. So we got a group of people together and we started talking about this book. And then we realized that, you know what, we're really good at talking about stuff. And maybe we should try doing a podcast instead. And so we started doing podcast episodes. And fast forward, 3 years? I think it's almost been 3.
We're in our fourth.
Has it been 4?
Yeah, we're in our fourth.
Oh my God. So we've been doing this a while now. We're getting pretty good at it. And
I hope.
Yeah. Well, at least they kind of go smoothly, and we don't, it only takes us 45 minutes to a 30-minute episode rather than 2 hours to do a 30-minute episode. But so that's what I mean by good. But it was just a connection out of the blue. She probably knows a dozen accountants, so I feel lucky that I was the one that she called. But it's been fun. We call it our therapy because, in addition to talking about really important things recorded and on air, we also help each other behind the scenes with our own businesses because we're all entrepreneurs as well. So it's a great support system, a smart bunch of women. So I feel privileged to be part of the group for sure.
Was joining a podcast like this something out of your comfort zone, or were you willing to jump in feet first?
Maybe a little bit out of my comfort zone. I did a few years, probably half a decade, on the board of CGABC, and I was the chair as we went through amalgamation with the other professions. So I was put in front of people a lot and learned to think on my feet speaking. So I think I used those skills for the podcast. So yeah, there's always a little bit of trepidation. Every time we start one, it's like, oh my God, am I going to have the right thing to say? But we settle into it and have a good time. And it all seems to kind of come out naturally in the wash. So
I love it. And I also love that Rita's just out here pushing everybody into podcasts. I was also very nervous when she recommended I come on here. I did not want to, but I'm very thankful that she did. And I would like to hear from her. Can you share a story of a company that significantly benefited from your guidance, highlighting the impact of your career growth with it?
Yeah, I can do that. But before I do that, I'm not a podcast pusher. In fact, I was very much against doing a podcast until these all very smart and type A women pushed me into it. So I was actually pushed into it. maybe I've slightly become a podcast pusher now, but I just wanted to make that disclaimer. For some reason I had to. And Melissa, you came up with this idea and you said, well, answer questions that millennials want to have answered, but I'm not a millennial. I'm in the golden age, so I don't know how you think. So it just naturally made sense for me to turn it back around and say, hey, you go for it. So just to highlight that piece. And then with regards to supporting a client and helping them and helping any client that I have the blessed opportunity to work with and support in their growth journey, I learn lots of things, whether it's taking a deep breath and not hitting my head against the wall or yelling at them or saying, this is what you need to do because you can see it so clearly, to any like the kind of soft skill side of things, and just having them or giving them the space to have the opportunity to share what's in their heart. Because I work with CEOs, and when they come to me with an issue that needs to get resolved, it's usually not one thing, it's several things. And there's nobody else for them to talk to. And so they can't say to their staff, oh, I'm having an issue with the growth of the company or financing or whatever, because that would scare the crap out of them. And, you can't take other day-to-day stuff because apparently as a CEO, you're supposed to know everything. So then instead they'll dump that on me, and I don't have all the answers, but we can walk through it and go through considerations and thoughts and strategies. There's, I guess, one in particular that I was supporting, and I got a call from an accountant and they had sent me a letter, and it was a bank call letter. So for those of you that don't know what that means, is that the bank basically said, we're calling your facilities, which means your line of credit, your credit cards. They're basically saying, we are now demanding that you pay for it in full right now. And they give you a little bit of time to walk through that. And so, but basically they're saying goodbye, get out of the bank and go find a new bank, find a new home, because we don't want to work with you anymore. So I got the letter when it was in its third iteration, meaning that it had already been sent out twice. So I got the call saying, I think we might need a hand. Can you help us regroup and figure this out and find a new position or a new bank? And so because I actually know the bank, I could call the account manager, found out that it had already gone to the insolvency team. I happen to know the folks back in Toronto, so I picked up the phone and called them and said, I need time to work through this process. The timeline you gave on this letter is a week, and I understand without saying anything else, you've already given this information out several times, but I need about a month and a half to get this going. So we basically had to complete all of the interim financials, get it stamped by an accountant. In the meantime, figure out all of the foundation and understanding of the business and what the heck, why were they being kicked out? And it came down to an understanding of security and collateral, and one of the partners not signing a personal guarantee. And that's what it boiled down to, because they had a lot of credit, but not sufficient guarantee behind it. And they weren't the bank decided the risk was not within the parameters that they were willing to work with at the time. So you have to work through a lot of the pieces and also calm down the owners, which is several owners, as you get the work done to move them over, and then, put out a synopsis to several banks to get them to say, yes, we'll consider it. And we didn't hide anything from the other banks. We said, these guys have gotten a demand letter and they're out the door. So we made sure that everybody was well aware, because we work in good faith. Another bank did pick them up, and we did end up moving them within a month and a half. And so the collateral and security side was an issue. The other issue was that they had never been profitable. If I fast forward 7 years working with the clients, I ended up helping them get to profitability, to beautiful EBITDA. Not only that we did their entire succession plan, set up their family trusts, their family hold co's, their individual co's, and we helped them purchase the building that they were in as well. And so, and then kind of, help them through that really ugly process, and then move them through into, a beautiful EBITDA and growth and trajectory. And so I'd say I learned a lot from that. Systems, process, making sure that we had the right team and staff and alignment, as well as the external team that, supported the business, the accountants, the lawyers. There were several involved in all of that process, POS systems, IT, insurance, you name it, all of it was involved. So there was amazing and incredible learning from my side and my perspective, and hopefully for the clients as well. But in the end, it was a beautiful story.
Thank you, Rita, really highlighting the importance of a strong support system. And I do want to correct my earlier phrasing. Yes, you are not a podcast pusher, but you have done a lot to encourage growth and push those comfort zones and boundaries, and myself asking me to speak in workshops in the past. And I really do appreciate that.
I think you're a superstar, Melissa. I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again. And I think I even told someone on your executive leadership team that, Melissa will have us all working for her one day. It's kind of how highly I feel about you. So I still feel that way. But I'm going to reverse now, because you aren't aware of this, but it's our turn, ladies. Holly, Candace, it's our turn now, because Melissa's not sitting here just as a co-host, but she's also a maven. There's been some amazing and incredible stuff that she's done. So we'll put her on the spot before we wrap up. Any burning questions that you guys have to ask Melissa on her journey?
Maybe she can tell us about a pivotal moment in her career.
A pivotal moment in my career. That's such a great question. And the joys of being put on the spot. I'm so thankful for my Toastmaster background. I'd have to say a pivotal moment has been really challenging myself in my current role in business development. You can go to school for something, you can study business, you can learn about it. But when you actually hit the ground running and you're doing things on your own and you're reviewing so many different businesses, everything has its own small details, intricacies that aren't going to align with what you learned. So it's a very challenging industry. Nothing's ever the same. It's a lot of fun. And I think the biggest aspect of the challenge for me too was the public speaking component. My great leader here, Holly, gave me a lot of room for growth and learning and development. And public speaking wasn't an area that I was comfortable in when I first started this position. I joined a Toastmasters club internally with Futurepreneur, and it's just really, I see the benefit of being involved in these learning and development groups and where it's taking my career to now.
She wasn't comfortable, but nobody would ever know. She's so amazing at it, and she's always been such a superstar with public speaking. And I'm glad that she's starting to be comfortable with it now, because you would never know otherwise. But as long as you're comfortable on the other side too, it's really that's important.
I have a question for you, Melissa. So if we're talking to our millennials out there and they're hearing some of these stories, how would I even start? How do I even start navigating my path? What would be the biggest kind of piece of advice that you would give me if I was a junior millennial trying to just start navigating my career? What would be the advice that you would give them?
I love that question, Rita, and I also want to flip that question at the end. What I would say to that as a millennial is the importance of mentorship. I really see the importance and the benefits that mentorship offers to entrepreneurs and something that we do through our programming at Futurepreneur. But I think about the importance of mentorship as a young person starting their career is really latching onto somebody you look up to in your workplace. That could be that sounding board for important advice, could be your person that you just go to vent when needed. I think those are the biggest things.
Perfect. So I take it you probably had some good mentors along the way, and that's why you're recommending that as well.
I believe so. I don't accredit my success to just myself. I think it is the mentorship that I've received throughout my 20s and even up until my 30s here now. I've been so blessed to have some amazing people that speak into my life and also correct me when I'm wrong. And I think that is a huge and important aspect. It's to have somebody to call you on your stuff.
Yeah. And then learning to listen and potentially accept it and do something about it. So, yeah. Perfect. So I think that we're getting close to the end. We might have gone a little over, versus some of the episodes, but it's been so interesting. This is the time that we kind of go around the group and we throw out a last question to either our guests or to each other, or share something that has resonated with us or something that was an aha moment. It's called our quick fire. So we'll go around the room, and I won't put my guests on the spot right away, but I'll start with Candace, so I'm okay to put her on the spot. So Candace, I'll start with you.
So I think sitting here speaking with you guys and hearing stories, I think to me today, the importance of stories and hearing other people's perspectives, and maybe for our listeners, getting something from that perspective, because maybe something similar in their life, and it just gives them the power to move on and make decisions. I think there's power behind hearing other people's stories. So I appreciate the time we're spending today to share our stories. What about you, Melissa?
I have to agree with you on that, Candace, the importance of sharing stories, hearing stories, but also the importance of the boundary setting, the ability to make pivots within your career, your personal choice, and being value aligned. I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, is that value alignment. How about you, Holly?
I think for me, it's been that plans don't always, or maybe ever rarely, go the way that you expect. and that you can have this very specific path in front of you that you've planned very meticulously, and it rarely ever comes to be that way, and that's okay. And then in further to that, it's who you surround yourself with down those paths. And this old saying, it's not but who you know, or your network is your net worth. And I think that that's so true. Lifting others up and inspiring others and empowering others to be a part of that amazingness that happens when women shine and grow into diverse leaders. What about you, Rita? Rita Kim. I was going to say Kim because I read your name, Kim. Rita Kim.
What happens when you have two first names, right? I go by Kim or I go by Rita, so it's all good. But I liked what all of you had to say from the stories. I think that's a huge way of imparting learning, and in a way that allows you to connect and feel. I love, of course, the values alignment, adaptability, as you said, Holly, and the people you surround yourself with. I think the other thing that I'd like to say is get out of your comfort zone. I was not a podcast person. These guys pushed me into the podcast, and I'm very grateful for it because, as Candace said earlier, I have the opportunity to learn and grow from all of our guests and get inspired from their incredible stories. I also get the same from my Serenity Sisters. And it's an incredible platform for all of these pieces. And so it's one of the great joys in my life. And I never, ever would have thought that. As I went through my growth and learning in various stages as in my career, the one thing I never did was allow myself to get comfortable. As soon as I got comfortable, I threw myself out and went to a new place. As I grew older, I was getting really tired of it. I was like, can't I just get comfortable? Like, why can't I just be normal and just put my head down? It just was never who I was. And as you go through your journey in life and career, you get to learn more and more about who you aren't and who you are. But again, one of your biggest things is your people around you. So thank you to all my peeps today, my millennial mavens, as well as my golden girl sister. So thank you, Melissa, Holly, Candace, for a really great discussion today. And for the listeners, in the end, it's not about the title or position. It's about what you're doing to help grow others. And so we hope that you may share this episode with some entrepreneurs you know. And we also hope that maybe some of these could be some golden nuggets or insights that can help you with your journey. And as always, we hope that this episode has brought you some serenity now. Thanks so much for listening.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur you know some serenity now.